Every great TV show has a beginning,
but it's the finale that can leave its mark on television history.
Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Jeff, and you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast where we watch and discuss the pilots for shows while sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
But this month, we're doing things a little different. For the month of December, we're judging the series finales of some of our favorite shows that we've done on the pod.
And since we're covering series finales, we'll be delving much more into the series as a whole, so we must warn you, there are spoilers ahead. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hey, how's it going, Boo?
It's going good. It's my first of two days off that I have this week, and it's been a pretty good day so far. We really have just been doing, I've just been doing a lot of writing up the episodes and watching. We watched one of our shows for this month, and you got some work done.
Yeah, I had to work. I had a team call early this morning. Then I had emails and some reports to do for work. And we watched one of our shows and then other YouTube stuff. And we made dinner and lunch. We made frozen frosé, which is fitting for this episode again.
Yes. So today we are continuing series finale month, and we watched the series finale of Mad Men for Mad Men. Mm-hmm. And you had seen it before. I don't think I had ever seen it. I haven't really seen a lot of Mad Men, but it was a really interesting series finale as someone who didn't watch the entire series, just because of just how insanely different they are. I have to say, like, out of all the shows that we've done so far this month, like, those are the two most polarizing when it comes to, like, the pilot versus the series finale. I mean, everything from the clothing to just the overall vibe, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess when you start in 1960 and you end in 1970, those are two completely different eras in every which way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it was really interesting, and we got a lot to talk about. And so Anna's going to do what she always does and give us some series and episode information.
Alrighty. Mad Men series finale, Person to Person. Again, as a reminder, Mad Men was an American period drama series that aired on AMC from 2007 to 2015 for 7 seasons with a total of 92 episodes. The series finale aired on May 17, 2015, and was written and directed by Matthew Weiner, the show's creator. The final season of Mad Men was split into 2 parts, part 1 that aired in 2014, and the second part that aired a year later. I can tell you, I hated when they started doing that. Like, I don't remember what series was the first that did that.
That kept splitting up seasons.
I'm like, just do it in 1 year.
I think it kind of started. I think it started when the movies started doing it for their final movie, and they started doing part 1 and part 2. Maybe.
The series takes place over the course of a decade, starting in 1960, ending in 1970, showing how much the world, specifically the workplace, changed in just 10 years. Mad Men was intended to take place over the course of the 60s, and by season 7, the decade was coming to an end, so Matthew Weiner decided the show would reach its natural conclusion. The series finale mostly focuses on Don's journey of self-discovery while attending a retreat in California, but also shows the other characters getting their own conclusion. You can watch the entire series on AMC Plus, and the first 5 seasons are on Prime Video and Max.
So you did watch the series finale when it originally aired, or around that time?
Yes.
So what was your feeling of... So you remember watching it?
Yes, I do. And I do remember the whole, like, everyone was speculating how it was going to end. I mean, it's really kind of one of my first sort of, I think I mentioned this when we did the pilot initially for the pod, that it was really one of the first shows that I remember Facebook chatter being about and people talking about it. And I do remember the guesses of how it was going to end. Like, everyone was speculating what was going to happen. I don't remember lots of the speculations. I was going to actually look at my Facebook timeline at around that time. But I do. I remember watching it and being excited to see what was going to happen to everyone.
So watching it, just watching the show in general, like I know, like I was born in 1984. I don't really remember a lot of the 80s itself, but because it carried over like into the 90s, like the aesthetic, the music and movies, that was all still present in the 90s. I do feel like I was raised like in the 80s culture. Do you ever feel nostalgic when you watch stuff that's set in the 60s, even though or the early 70s, even though you weren't technically conscious of it at the time?
For me, a lot of it is the clothes,
Mm-hmm.
the homes, like the furniture, the appliances.
Yeah.
Even down to things like food packaging, things like Tupperware that they use, the phones. I mean, all of that, like even the cars and things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's also why I do love watching shows like that go back in time. Like, we've done the Wonder Years, and I mean, that was definitely during my childhood time.
Right.
So yeah, I look back on Mad Men and just think about like all the way things were back then, in the sense of like technology, women in the workplace, and just kind of growing up in that era. It was definitely nostalgic for me.
So I believe in the Mad Men pilot episode that we did, we talked about our favorite commercials, most memorable jingles. Are there any, now let's kind of talk about like the opposite end. Are there any like jingles or commercials that you remember that would that you didn't like or that you hated that would get stuck in your head?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I mean, do you know of one off the top of your head?
I wrote down a few.
Okay, you go first, and let me see if I can think of stuff.
So locally, and I may have talked about this on the Mad Men pilot, I actually don't remember. I was going to go back and listen to it, but then I ended up not doing it. There's a local commercial that plays on the radio a lot, and I'm sorry to my local person, but get Gordon and get it done.
Yes.
Good Lord.
I sing that all the time.
I mean, I end up doing it too, and it's one of those that like I hate it, but it gets stuck in my head, and you know what? That's the point. It's supposed to get stuck in your head. So there was this old commercial from the 90s that it cycled through and had different iterations of it. It was the old pull-up diaper commercials.
Oh.
Mommy, wow. I'm a big kid now. And that would get stuck in my head all the time because that commercial would play constantly along with the Flintstones kids vitamin commercial.
Oh, wow.
10 billion strong and growing. It's that.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's like, see, I remember. And there was other one. It was when kids were in commercials. I think that's when it annoyed me because I was also a kid. And I just thought it was, I don't know why, because there was this other one. It was for Kraft macaroni and cheese, and it was called the Blue Box Blues. And these kids would sing like having the blues, but then they would get their mac and cheese, and then everything was fine. It was just one of those things that would just get stuck in your head. And then it wasn't a jingle, but I was never a fan. So are there any that you can think of?
I could, like, there's one, again, you talk locally,
Yeah.
and there's one, and anyone who's listening from New Orleans, there was, I think it was like a furniture store or like an appliance store in New Orleans. It was called Rosenberg's.
Okay.
And it was, and I'm going to go ahead and claim I cannot sing, so do not come at me in the comments. It was like Rosenberg's 1825 Tulane, and that was the street that it was on. However, when I was little, I always thought they were saying too late, and I never got it. I was like, why are they saying too late? Like, I don't understand. But I didn't know that there was an actual street called Tulane when I was little. I mean, I knew Tulane University, but I didn't know all the streets in New Orleans when I was very young. So that one is definitely one that sticks in my mind. Like any Popeyes commercial back in the day, especially early on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of commercials are probably annoying to me. I can't really pinpoint
Same.
one. Any ironically attorney commercial, like you said, like get
Right.
Gordon.
Yeah.
and get it, like that one.
Right.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I do it now. It's going to be stuck in my head again. But they're always the ones that are like, I can turn this wreck into
Right.
your check, and all of those kinds. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are plenty of those local lawyer commercials that would circulate all the time.
oh yeah,
So I kind of touched on it a second ago, talking about like how vastly different the pilot and the series finale are, just with the clothing and the all of the kind of the overall attitude, and women working in non-secretarial jobs. Like, is there anything about that like resonates with you?
Well, I mean, I thought it was amazing that Peggy and Joan had moved up so much in the 10 years.
Yeah.
I feel like that's still pretty astonishing from just the 60s to the 70s.
Right.
Mostly because Joan had become a partner at the advertising firm, and she had left, and then, in this episode, you'll talk about it, decided to create her own production company and asked Peggy to join her to be a partner. And again, you'll probably mention this in the summary, but that Peggy turned her down. She never totally delves into why she turns her down, but I think it was really because Peggy wanted to find her own way. I mean, Peggy wanted to make her own name, and I thought that actually ended up being great for Joan, because Joan would have her own business, her own company, and her own name, and Peggy still wouldn't be under someone. Well, she was on the show, she was still doing copy, and she was one of the executives and stuff, but I thought that was interesting in that sense, and just kind of how they had come into their own by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy because watching the pilot, everyone is like in like these, like they're in these slick suits, their hair is all just slicked short, and their hair is all short and slicked back, and it just felt very like sterile, very like not stainless steel, but I just want to say like sterile. Everything was just very like drab, kind of bleak feeling. And then watching the series finale, everything is just so much more like colorful. And I mean, like, it was just really funny to see these people in the workplace, and like one of the guys is just wearing like jeans and like a tucked in like plaid long sleeve or something like that.
You have to think about, in the 70s, like Woodstock had just happened in 69. Yep. Obviously other important things like the moon landing, the Manson murders, all of those. I had just been born technically, so I definitely think there was a movement of like freedom and kind of expanding of your mind.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean drug wise or anything, but just like, back in the 60s, it was always very clean cut, very much like rigid. This is how it is. This is how it's always been.
Yeah.
And this is how it's going to be going in the future. Whereby the 70s, it was a little bit more freedom and free falling, and
just a lot more casual.
Yeah,
a
definitely.
lot more, I would say, laid back.
Yes, like that.
Yeah, it was just, I just thought it was kind of, it makes me want to start from the beginning and just watch the whole thing, because kind of each season is like over a period of like a year or something like that. And I know the last season was like partially in 1969, and the second part was in 1970. It would just be really interesting, because I don't know if I've ever really watched a show that did that kind of just showed, like, I mean, other than it like naturally happening like over to the course of like naturally like in present day, like it takes place in present day, but in that sense of just kind of like it being a period piece, but it taking place over like a long period of time. I think that is really interesting, and I'm sure it's happened before. I'm sure it's been done before, but in my mind, I don't know if I've ever really watched a show that's done that. And I mean, we haven't really watched The Crown yet, but I know The Crown does that. But yeah, like it really makes me want to kind of go, and I know I probably said it when we watched the pilot, but I was like, I definitely want to go and watch the whole series just to see the the natural progression of each year and things getting things just kind of evolving.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it did that. I definitely think like each of the characters kind of had their own expansion in that decade.
Yeah.
Be it with someone, with themselves, with the job, with like the world in and of itself. I think everyone was sort of growing and expanding.
Yeah.
And that to me was definitely indicative of the 60s into the 70s.
Whose like character storyline were you the most kind of interested in as the series progressed as a whole? Like, which character were you the most like invested in with their, because it seems like by the end of the series everyone is kind of, all the main characters are kind of off on their own path, it seems. Pete's going to Wichita, I believe. He's like moving, and then Peggy's like staying at the company, moving up. Joan's doing her own thing. January Jones is doing her own thing. And then obviously Don's doing his whole thing, like his own thing. Like, which one kind of resonated? Not resonated, but like which one were you the most interested in?
It's kind of funny because I'll say Sally, Don and Don,
Kieran Shipka.
Yeah, Kieran Shipka.
Sally Draper.
Don, yeah. Sally Draper.
Yeah.
Mostly because one, she was the kid, and, I think she went through a lot between her parents' dynamic and then Betty remarrying and her kind of coming into her own self as a teen and then in high school. And, I kind of wonder what it would have been like growing up in the 60s.
Right.
I mean, obviously I was born at the end of the 60s, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s. But to me, that would have been an interesting time to actually grow up, in the sense of seeing the differences that you could make as a female, because I think the Betty Drapers, the Joans, and the Peggys were all very much of the, like, you were expected to get married, to have a baby, to be in charge of your household, and that was what it was. And she definitely saw that with Betty, but here you also had Joan and Peggy kind of establishing their own career paths and their own businesses. I mean, obviously she didn't technically see all those things, but I think looking back at the 40s and the 50s and seeing how far women had come by the 1970s, definitely, we still have a way to go, apparently. Right. But I think as a preteen and teen, being able to see that there was hope for your future, that you didn't have to be sort of, I hate saying stuck being a housewife, but that you had choices. Right. A lot of things happened in the 70s, particularly for women. There are even sort of crazy things that happened in the pilot that we talked about then, was that Peggy got on birth control, and it was secret birth control that you usually couldn't get unless you had the permission of your husband. I mean, it wasn't until the 70s that women could get credit cards. And so I think a lot happened, particularly for women, and I think that was a big part of the show. Yeah. What about you? Well, I mean, you didn't watch it, so
I would say the person that I would be the most interested in, and it is kind of a lame answer, but just seeing how vastly different Don was from the pilot to the finale, because I've seen almost zero in between. So kind of seeing what caused, I'm really interested to learn like what caused him wanting to take this journey of self-discovery, like what caused all of this to happen. It just seems really interesting because he always, even in the pilot, he just seemed like he was always on the brink of losing it. I even kind of felt it at that point in time. It just seemed like he was doing so much and kind of not letting anyone in, and just kind of pretending like everything was fine and he wasn't talking about anything. I'm just really interested to see like how that evolved and how that progressed.
Gotcha. I'm looking up to see if I actually posted about it. I did. I like one of the things I posted, so I did find it. I said, I will admit that this scene did get to me a bit. I always wanted Peggy to be happy, and I said Peggy and Stan forever.
That was a sweet scene.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of it. Was I wanted her to be happy. I just felt like, and I had another one. I said Peggy and Stan forever.
Aw.
And then I also wrote on May 17th, I'd watch a Peggy and Joan spinoff, hashtag girl power. And then this is, I said, this was one of the quotes that I kind of took from it, and that I definitely had this revelation in my life. Was she said, Peggy Olson said, I haven't taken a vacation, well, ever. And I'll admit, in the first, like, maybe 7 to 8 years of my career post law school, I didn't take vacation. As a female, I felt like I couldn't do that because it would be frowned upon, that I would be seen as weak, or, I needed a break and I couldn't handle it. And whether it was that or not, I just also felt like I just had to do a good job.
Yeah.
And taking a vacation meant like that showed weakness. And then I guess right before I started watching it, I posted getting ready for my breakup with Don Draper. So I was gearing up for this one.
Yeah.
I mean, that was May 17th, 2015. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Summer watched this as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, shout out to Summer because we were chatting over Facebook about it.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Are you ready to get into the summary?
Let's do it.
Person to person. Series finale summary. In the fall of 1970, Don calls Sally from Utah, where he's witnessed Gary, is it Gablich? Gary Gablich's Blue Flame break the land speed record at the Bonneville Speedway. Sally gives Don the news about Betty's cancer diagnosis and states her opinion that Bobby and Jean should stay away Henry Francis after their mother's death, as this will allow them to stay in the same school, same house, and have the same friends. Phoning Betty next, Don implores her to have his children live with him. However, Betty insists that she wants them to live with her brother and his wife, stating that they need stability and a woman in their lives, things that Don cannot provide. And also, he's having like a mental breakdown in Utah. It's just like, why would you, I don't know. I get it. I definitely get where Betty's coming from. Making his way further west to California, Don reunites with Anna Draper's niece, Stephanie, who has left her child to be raised with his paternal grandmother. Don tries to give her Anna Draper's wedding ring, which she had left to Don, who had used it to propose to Megan. Megan returned it after the divorce. Stephanie rejects the gift, seeing no point. She is about to leave for Oceanside spiritual retreat further up the state's coastline and takes Don with her. Have you ever, I think I asked you this, have you ever been on any type of retreat before?
No, and those have become like, I think, again, kind of super popular, particularly for women. I've had some friends go on, I think, what are called like surfing retreats for women in Costa Rica.
Uh-huh.
I've seen women going on like yoga retreats. I've seen them happen in like the Dominican Republic or like in like Fiji and other places that are very, tropical and exotic, and they seem amazing. I've actually had friends that help put them on. They're just always so expensive.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could afford that, or, but I couldn't. You sit there and think like, should I invest this in myself and go and do it? And maybe I should or whatever. But when they're like $3,000 to $5,000 for like a quote unquote 4-day yoga retreat and come and learn to be stronger. I get it, but I don't know. I couldn't invest that much in a retreat like that.
I remember when the whole like adult sleepaway camp trend started up. I think this was like maybe I think this was probably pre-COVID. I remember looking into it and it just being so expensive. I'm just like, oh yeah, right. Regular summer camp for kids is really expensive. I'm assuming it's even more expensive for adults because there's so much other things included in it.
Well, what is that like?
So basically you're going to sleepay camp, but you're an adult. Yeah. Oh. So there's more like, I think
canoeing.
I think there's more like, like a singles night. And
I was
like
gonna say, is it sex?
No. It's like it's more of like, Yeah, it's summer camp for adults, and there's like alcohol involved, and there's
singles
other...
night, costume party,
Right.
like kind of like challenge, but
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. That's
Got it.
pretty much. Yeah, and you do. Anything that you would do at a summer camp, you could sign up for things. Like I think they're the
crafts
ones.
and art.
I think there's like the specific ones where you have like everyone has like a pre-planned like agenda, and then there's like the other ones that are more like actual summer camps where you can choose what activities you do and
Gotcha.
do all of that. But they're all really expensive.
Yeah, the ones I looked at for women, the surfing, the yoga, the women's empowerment. I mean, those were all great. And actually, I mean, I think I would love to learn how to surf. I don't know if I'd be very good at it. I love yoga. That's, I think, why I looked at those.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't super great at yoga.
Yeah.
I can do sort of some of the basic stuff, or I used to be able
I've never
to.
done any yoga. So.
But I love that. But again, they're always in these like super tropical, remote places that are just not easy to get to or inexpensive.
Yeah.
I mean, Costa Rica would probably be the closest, and Southwest goes there, but again, it's not an easy trip, nor is it cheap to do. So that's always in the back of my mind. I mean, if it was like here in like Texas or Mississippi somewhere, there are lots of cool places here. You could learn to do yoga and stuff, but sorry, I'm yawning again. But I just wish they were a little more affordable. And I know that sometimes these might be sort of, I hate saying it, like fundraisers, not fundraisers, but they're income driven. They're like to raise money for that person who's doing it. Like it's like their income. So I guess obviously they have to charge a premium, but I wish there was something that was a little less expensive.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So meanwhile, as Joan and Richard begin planning their new life together, she receives a business opportunity from her old colleague, Ken Cosgrove. She then offers Peggy a partnership in a film production company she is starting. She considers it and even discusses it with Stan, who tells her that her current job is a better fit, which leads to them arguing. Richard is displeased with Joan's professional ambition and leaves. It doesn't fit in with his plans for them. And there's sometime later, Roger visits and tells Joan that his daughter Margaret is now lost, and he is going to completely cut her out of his will, leaving his estate to his grandson Ellery and Kevin, who doesn't know Roger is his father. Joan reveals to Roger that Greg has no contact or relationship with Kevin, and that it will actually be something of a relief to know that Kevin's future will be provided for. Roger tells her that he's going to marry Megan's mother, Marie Calvert, and Joan laughs, delighted by the scandal.
That was actually Don Draper's mother-in-law. That was Megan's mother.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. So
back at the Francis residence, Sally has returned home from boarding school, ostensibly because she missed Bobby and Jean. Bobby reveals he knows about Betty's cancer and knows that Sally has really returned to take care of him and Jean because their mother is going to die soon. Noticing that Bobby has burned his grilled cheese, Sally offers to show him how to do it properly, and she commences being the woman of the house.
It was very, very sweet.
That was a very sweet scene.
Because Jean is Henry and Betty's son, her second husband.
Gotcha.
So that's like the little brother.
Gotcha.
And that was what was also, I think, Betty's kind of concern about Don coming back, because Jean wasn't his son, and so I mean, would Don really care about Jean? I mean, obviously Henry wouldn't let Don take Jean from him. So, yeah.
Later at the retreat, Stephanie abandons Don after receiving troubling criticism in group therapy about abandoning her child with his paternal grandparents. Stuck at the retreat with no means of leaving for several days, a distraught Don calls Peggy in her office. Peggy pleads for him to return home to his job, insisting McCann Erickson would gladly take him back, and there is work to be done with the Coca-Cola account. A little bit of mentioning.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. In despair and on the verge of a breakdown, Don confesses many of his wrongdoings to Peggy, stealing another man's name, breaking all of his vows, and scandalizing Sally, believing that he's done nothing truly substantial in his life, and confiding that the main reason he called was he never bade her goodbye. Peggy replies that's not true and tries again to convince him to come home. After Don hangs up, Peggy discusses the disturbing call with Stan over the phone. Though Peggy is concerned for her mentor, Stan thinks that Don has disappeared off the radar many times before and has always returned. She apologizes for the earlier argument, and Stan tells her that he is in love with her. Peggy initially is flustered, but suddenly realizes she loves him too. He then rushes to her office where they kiss. That was probably my favorite scene. They were super cute.
Oh my God, it was so good. It was so good.
The way she was just like, hello, hello, then he just like shows up to her. I was like, of course we knew that was happening, but it was just really sweet. Yeah, they have great chemistry. A counselor at the retreat notices that Don is upset, which was Helen Slater.
Yes.
That was
oh my God, Supergirl.
Yeah. What was the movie she was in with Christian Slater? Where The Legend of Billie Jean.
The Legend of Billie Jean. Oh my God.
Yeah, you introduced that movie to me.
God,
and
so good.
It was a great movie.
So good.
A counselor at the retreat notices that Don is upset and persuades him to attend a group therapy session she is on her way to. During the meeting, Don sees a fellow attendee, Leonard, confessing to feeling unloved and overlooked by his family and colleagues. Leonard describes a dream where he is an item in a refrigerator that no one selects. He then breaks down crying. Don, overcome with emotion, embraces him and breaks down as well.
Oh my God, that scene.
That was a really great scene.
It was amazing.
It's kind of the lead up to it. It was, that actor, I don't know who that actor was. I don't remember, but whoever that actor was that did that scene, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
The episode and the series as a whole ends with a montage of the fates of the major characters. Pete, Trudy, and Tammy board a Learjet, taking them to their new lives in Wichita. Joan operates her thriving new business, Holloway Harris Productions, from her apartment while her mother looks after her son. Roger and Marie sit in a cafe in Paris on their honeymoon and muse about an elderly couple seated nearby. That was also really cute.
It was so cute.
Sally does housework and tends to her younger brothers while Betty smokes a cigarette and reads behind her. Peggy, hard at work on an assignment, receives a loving embrace from Stan. Don, seated in the lotus position, participates in a meditation class at the retreat center when a smile comes to his face. The show smash cuts to the groundbreaking 1971 Hilltop television advertisement for Coca-Cola. End of series.
End of series.
So you remember that commercial?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was 2 technically when that came out.
Yeah.
But that led to the whole, like, Coke brings the world together.
Yeah.
Because it was also famous, I think, that Coke had different bottling, like, I don't know what bottling breweries, I don't know what you call, like, for sodas, around the world. And I remember that there was a promotion that you could get the Coke bottles with Coke in different languages on them. And you would collect back in olden days, or they still might have them, where you had the 6-pack holders, kind of like for beer, for Coke. And you would try to collect these bottles. And I don't remember how you got them. I don't know where they were, but I remember... I'm going to totally make it up, but I think I had like Coke in Japanese. I had Coke in Korean, Coke in like French. I mean, like in all these languages, and you just wanted all the little mini Coke bottles, and totally remember all of that. Yeah, I totally do.
Yeah. So watching the series finale now versus when you originally watched it, is there any difference of feeling, or do you just kind of have the same feeling?
Oh, the same feeling.
Just that
I mean,
like...
looking back at my post, I mean, and for me to actually have posted about it on the day that it was happening, that's how big it was to me then.
Right.
I mean, just, it was, and then like kind of Facebooking it as it was happening, the whole like Peggy and Stan. I just remember like... like how far she came from the first episode. Like, I just freaking hated, was it Peter? Pete, yes. Yeah. I mean,
Vincent Kartheiser.
He ended up with his wife, and he had gotten a new job with Learjet. That's why he was on a Learjet. Gotcha. They were going off to Wichita, and I was just glad he was leaving, because I always kind of felt like he was like this little thorn that was maybe festering with Peggy, and you know, he was always there, and I just was like, you just need to go, like, get away from her and stop bugging her. And I was just happy he had decided to be happy with Trudy and his daughter, and him start anew, go Pete, and, you know, do your own thing with your family and leave Peggy alone to have her own happiness and her own joy and her job and her love life and whatever that meant. Because I just was like, oh God, Peggy and Joan, like those two were to me the ones from the first episode that intrigued me the most. Yeah.
All right, you think that about wraps up this one?
I do. Yes. Mad Men, loved it.
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I don't have a lot of opinions because these are the only episodes. The pilot and the finale are really the only episodes that I watched.
And it's only 92 episodes. I'm not saying like obviously we couldn't binge it in a weekend or anything.
You're gonna be
but
the thing is that you're gonna be gone for a week.
Yes.
And I plan on watching. I plan on watching some shows. So
well, you'll have 2.5 full days with Max Murphy, and he'll be hanging out with you. But I think that would be one of the good shows for you to watch. I think they're easy to follow along with. Yeah.
I'll do that. All right, well, that about wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. Leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
I don't have too many. I mean, I just had like the soft drink emoji, obviously for Coke, the yoga emoji. Sadly, the cigarette and the lung for Betty. That about killed me, that scene, because, she had cancer and she was still smoking.
I know, that always frustrates me.
The camera emoji for Joan's production company. And then the heart emoji for Peggy and Stan, and maybe the plane for the Learjet.
Yeah.
The peace symbol, anything like that to represent the 60s, 70s. All right. Well, I think we're going to head out, but thanks. But we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.